And we've got a picture that we need to share with you. But before we share that picture, just want to say good morning, Mr. Nico Kleynhans.
Good morning to you and also to the listeners.
Thank you for coming into studio, braving the traffic. And talking about brave, this rooster must be considered very brave.
I think this rooster represents the most optimistic view of life that you can possibly have.
So for those who are perhaps visually impaired or not able to watch this on Facebook or YouTube, it's a photo of a rooster that has definitely been through the ringer. The kind of, what do you call those? The stems of the feathers are visible. The feathers have been, I don't know.
And it's like what
destroyed.
feathers?
Exactly. Like there's very few feathers on this rooster, but still strutting his stuff.
And he walks proud. He's determined to keep his head high, and he's going to survive whatever life throws at him. He's not going to be brought down to his knees by circumstances. Now, I chose this photograph after speaking to a young man yesterday. This young man actually exists. He lives in Khayelitsha. He lives in a one-room shack in Khayelitsha. And in the evening when he gets home, he buys his electricity from across the road. And so he's able to get some lights in his shack. In summer, he melts. In winter, he freezes. And he has what they call the Somalian Wi-Fi. This is something the people buy in the townships. They buy it from the Somali shops. It's a little SIM card which they put in their phones. And that's his contact with the outside world. It's terribly slow Wi-Fi, but he's able at least to communicate via WhatsApp with his sister in the Eastern Cape. So that's his world. He's determined to survive. He's determined to be independent. He's employed, and he earns an allowance from the state as an intern, and they pay him 3,500 rand a month. And he's been living off this for a while. And out of that, he's got to buy his food, and he's got to pay for all his expenses. He needs to study further. And the next course that he has to do is going to cost him 30,000 rand. And he's got to find that money from his allowance. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to do it. But to finish the course that he wants to start, he has to find 100,000 over the next 2 years. But he's still an optimist. He still wants to walk with his head held high. Now, if he's lucky, the state is going to fund the first 30,000, and then that's the end of their obligation. So he's now got to put a plan together of how he's going to earn from that first course enough money to pay for the rest of his course.
Sure.
That's his challenge in life.
Yeah.
So he is not one of those who can focus on problems, because if he does, he's going to give up, curl up, and just walk away.
Yeah.
And so, because of his optimism and because of his faith in divine protection and divine path ahead of him, he keeps going. And in spite of what the world says, he is determined to move ahead. Now, this made me think, what do we do as individuals, you and I and the listeners, when life seems to be unfair or unequal? How do we cope? What is our natural reaction? Do we keep strutting and saying, I'm going to get to the other end? Or do we just give up? What do we do when our financial needs tend to overwhelm more than we can possibly cope with? I like this young man. I like his belief in divine protection. And I hope that we, as South Africans, because we do face that kind of world, all of us, are able to cope and are able to fight back and are able to turn our own existence into something glorious that represents possibilities rather than only problems.
Sure. Thank you, Nico. Really appreciate that. And you know what? If you feeling as in you've been brave, but your inner strength is starting to wane, turn to the source of ultimate strength, that being our God and King. Thank you so much, Nico. Really given us a lot to think about.